So, hey everyone. Hey friend. This is a new setup for us.
It is. We are at the Line Hotel in DC. First of all, a lovely podcast studio, as you all can see if you are watching us. If you're listening, hop over to YouTube, but make sure you tune into our episodes on video as well.
Like, follow, subscribe.
Period. You got it.
All right. So, what are we talking about today?
So today we are talking about quitting. And we like to talk about quitting from a perspective of quitting multiple things. It's not just your career, which we've had a lot of talks about at this stage of life, in this stage of the economy, post-pandemic, but it's more than that.
Yeah, and so we did this really fun workshop in November that we're going to be redoing and amplifying in a couple weeks here in DC.
Absolutely.
On quitting. And when we say quitting, quitting can mean anything. Quitting can be how you talk to yourself, how you talk to other people, things you do or don't do, things about how you interact with your work or other people. And so it's really an exercise on thinking about things in your life that are no longer serving you and letting them go.
I love that. Yeah.
That's how I see quitting.
It can be a habit. It can be a person. It can be a place. It can be a thing.
So it could be an act, like if you're spending too much money or you're not spending enough money. I mean, says no one ever, but you know, whatever. It could be eating habits. It could be whatever.
Exactly. And we wanted to dive into that with you all today, and also obviously put a twist of being at a big age on it too. Yeah,
and that it's not a one and done thing. I think that's the thing about this stage for us that's been really taken a minute to wrap our head around. I know for me, and we were just talking about it, is that we do these things that we think we're solving an issue, and then there's another issue.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right? And that's normal and natural, and you know, we know that healing isn't linear. But I think there's this effort to make decisions, and once you make those decisions, we've solved the thing, but the thing is going to be the thing forever.
The thing will be the thing until we get to the root. So,
right.
Before we get into today's topic, though, we're going to do a bit of a dumb shit segment in our OG format, which is literally a dumb shit that a man said. So let's talk about it. And the internet has been ablaze lately. In the 50-plus part series called Who the Fuck Did I Marry? Did you tune into any of the 1 through 50?
I tuned into little snippets that were highlighted on different celebrity news outlets.
True.
I'm not a big TikTok person.
Yep.
And then I saw her interview with Tamara Hall.
Yep, Tamara Hall.
I saw that and was very moved.
Very moved. I didn't see the full interview, but I also saw a clip. So I realized that there may be people who are listening or watching who have no idea what we're talking about. So I'm about to give a briefer than 50 segment, 50-part series synopsis. Okay, so I don't know her full name, but she goes by Risa M. Tisa on TikTok, if anyone is interested. And she opens up this series where she starts off by saying, I'm going to tell you how I was married to a pathological liar. And she goes through everything that this person lied about, from telling her that he was a football star, he had all this money in the bank, printing out what happened to be fake bank account statements, printing out fake Chase loan offers to buy homes.
That he couldn't actually use when they wanted to buy a home together.
Okay, and people will just send the verification of the funds, just wire the money, and he refused to do it. And she didn't really know how all of this worked, and so she just believed him, because why would someone make these things up with actual pieces of paper? Okay, lied about the number of family members he had, lied about his family being in the church, took her to his grandmother's grave site that was not where his grave was.
That's so sick. That poor deceased person.
Randomly deceased person who he lied to her and told her was her grandmother. Lied, of course, about his job, told her that he was going to buy her a brand new BMW. She said at one point that they spent their weekends looking at houses and cars, him claiming that he had all this money to buy her these things. And it just got a lot deeper and darker. But when we say pathological liar, that's exactly what she meant. There was nothing
that was truthful about his identity, that the person she fell in love with wasn't a real person.
And one of the things that he said was that he was a VP for a condiment brand, and made a big deal about having a huge salary and this great life, and that he had moved from the West Coast to Atlanta. And he had this new job, and he was living in a studio apartment only until he got his next big, house, life, whatever, all the monikers of success. And so the Breakfast Club, which is a very popular radio program that is syndicated out of New York and also has a hugely popular video cast here on YouTube, took on this topic in one of their segments. And do you remember what they said about her in particular?
Yeah, I heard that Charlamagne said that she didn't look like a VP because she was heavier.
So he said, as Jess Hilarious, who is someone who is a co-host on the show, let me just say that I feel like the entire show is giving nut mode. I don't know why people still take any of their analysis from these people. I think they have a lot of growth to do around just not just critical thinking, but also wellness and what it means to uplift our community, because they have a huge platform. And a lot of what they talk about is just absolutely degrading and trash to me personally. So Jess is one of those people who I don't think has a lot to say that we should be listening to. But as Jess kind of, also she's not hilarious, and that's actually the name that she goes by. But
her name is Jess Hilarious. Is that really her name?
That is her, it started off as her Instagram name.
But is her last name Hilarious?
I mean, I hope it's not her government name, but it's still a misnomer whether someone gave her that or that's her actual, you know what I'm saying? Because she's not funny. She said a lot of transphobic and homophobic things.
Not funny.
These people need to sit down somewhere, read a book, or drink water, and mind their business.
Definitely water.
Yeah, it's so important.
Bone broth. Electrolytes. Absorption is really important in big age. We're going to talk about that too.
So she's reading off the details, some of which that I just gave to you.
Right, so she's a VP at a corporation.
So this is what Jess is doing on the show.
Right.
Charlamagne responds and says, that sounds like big back behavior. That sounds like some big back behavior. Leading to the point that you just made, which is that this person could not be a VP's wife. She does not look like the type that a man of that caliber or of that status would want.
That's so disgusting. I can't even believe that people are listening to that trash or accepting it as something that people would say.
And it's not just him. Somebody forwarded me something on social media that said the same thing. It's like, I don't have time to listen to a 50-part series by a woman who is desperate. Sit your big ass down. So much of the commentary around her has been fatphobic.
Also, the fact that what I read, which also makes total sense to me, is that one of the reasons that it moved so quickly was because they were both very clear about what they wanted. Like, she wanted to get married, she wanted to have children, and being transparent about that is now being weaponized against her.
Yes.
I actually think it's very bold and beautiful and brave.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is, so a couple things. Number one, when I first heard the fat phobia, I thought to myself, being desperate for love and attention does not have a size, age, race, or gender attached to it. Number one, we all have made poor decisions out of a quest for love. And her seeing, and she's very open about seeing red flags and ignoring them.
But we all do that.
It's something that there is no person on this earth who has ever been in a romantic relationship or even a platonic friendship has not done.
Also, in retrospect, there are a lot more red flags than there were in the moment.
Exactly.
Right, so yeah, I mean, right, I'm sure there were a lot of red flags, but if you really want to believe something, you can convince yourself of anything. People don't know they're pregnant until they give birth sometimes.
Will be completely detached from
their
reality.
Body, their mind. Right, it is not uncommon to disassociate from what's actually happening when you want something else to happen.
Exactly, which at her age, she wanted to get married and she wanted to have children. And she was also very clear about wanting to get out of the physical location she was in. She didn't feel like it was a safe neighborhood or area. So it was like the fairy tale, and she thought this was finally her moment, and this person was telling her every single thing she wanted to hear. And for me, that's where the role of religion enters the chat, because take out the fat phobia and people like Charlemagne and others. What stuck out to me was my heart broke for her because the ways in which, in her mind, she was using her Christian faith to substantiate some of these decisions. And that broke my heart. So she talked about not wanting to live with him unless she was married.
Not wanting to have a baby.
Unless she was married. She talked about her family and his family, allegedly, who we now know he didn't even really speak to, pressuring them to get married because they did live together. So it was this whole way that her life was interwoven with his as this thing began to obviously crash and burn. She caught him cheating and thought to herself, well, now I can finally divorce him because I caught him cheating, and adultery is a sin. But what about pathological lying that we knew beforehand?
Or the financial abuse, emotional abuse.
Bringing in another part of the story, because what I saw in a lot of this was abuse.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that? Because I feel like people who were entertained by this did not see it through the lens of an abuser.
So, okay, I mean, I don't know all the details, but to me, it reads abusive relationship from the beginning. Not all unhealthy relationships, obviously this one was unhealthy, are abusive, but all abusive relationships are unhealthy, right? And so right from the start, you've talked about financial abuse, you've talked about emotional abuse, you've talked about isolation, right? You've talked about using privilege, right? So financial privilege, economic privilege, professional privilege. Religion can be weaponized against, right? So all of these things where someone uses elements to exert power and control over someone else. Mm-hmm. So maybe he wasn't physically abusive, but he certainly was other forms of abusive. And I would hypothesize that he was coercive and probably sexually coercive, right? Like using these things to get her to do things that maybe she didn't feel comfortable with because he wanted to manipulate her.
And
that's abusive.
The manipulation, the emotional manipulation, because why bring someone to such a high just for it to never happen? Like, it got to a point where they were not on good terms. She came home from work one day and he had printed out this full itinerary to take her to London and to Paris on a first class.
But it was fake.
He did not even have a passport, and he could not get a passport because he was a convicted felon. So this idea, she talked about this, about how she felt like he was the kind of person who almost wanted to see her get really happy because he found pleasure in taking it away from her.
That's so fucked up and unwell. Can I also add something else into the chat, which I don't know exactly, I'm not going to be really clear about this, but there's something really like this carrot, you know, like dangling a carrot of proximity to wealth that is very disturbing to me.
For sure.
Like these things that, like first class, like going to Paris, buying a house as opposed to an apartment, that are these like outward symbols. So like, as opposed to soft luxury, loud, right? But also soft, right? Like these things that people think wealthy people do.
Yeah.
As a way to convince them that they're good. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but like this idea that like, what if it was just like a coach ticket to Paris?
Right. That the love bombing had to be so over the top. The love bombing was so
over the top. Like, I don't know, like I imagine that I'll go through my entire life never taking a first class flight to Paris. And I'm okay with that.
For sure.
I mean, I'm not going to say no to one. Like, I guess I just mean like that. So clearly she was trying to change her socioeconomic status and get out of where she was economically, and him like throwing all this overt wealth in her face as a way to blind her.
Yes. And so I think what you're questioning is, why were those things the most important?
Well, I'm not criticizing her. I'm actually saying that it's just even sicker.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like he knew what she was after.
Yeah,
or what
and like it's also like a sickness of society, right? That society or American society has convinced us that we're not successful unless we experience these things. There's a lot of joys in life that have nothing to do with status.
Okay. Last thing I'll say is, this is so funny, you haven't even watched this and you're hitting every nail on the head, that she said at some point that he did pay all the bills. Now, where the money came from, he was a forklift operator. He probably was borrowed from the one brother that he did speak to. But she said clearly, for the first time in her life, to be in a position where she was not living paycheck to paycheck and where she did not have any financial stress, was completely, and she used this word, intoxicating. It felt so good to her to be taken care of financially. And I can imagine many people feel that way.
Most people live paycheck to paycheck. So if that's how you have experienced life and then don't experience it that way.
Yep. And that has nothing to do with a big back.
And I remember, you and I don't live paycheck to paycheck, but I remember when we stopped.
Yes, me too. Yeah.
And I remember that as a thing.
Yeah.
And we were younger than she is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So she's lived a much longer life on her own.
By herself with this level of stress. And how could you ever fault someone for just wanting to be safe, secure, and loved?
Never.
And my fear is that the more we ostracize and shame her for telling her story, the more we don't see ourselves in her reflection.
So can I say something? Because it's so interesting you say that. My impression, or what I read, was that people were being very supportive of her.
It's been a mixed bag.
So this is so interesting, right? Like responding to our negative comments, what are we focusing on?
Exactly.
Right. And also, if you don't have something, clearly she's sharing this because it's a cathartic part of her healing. No one wants to be bamboozled like this.
No.
Right? It's embarrassing.
Yes.
She got married to someone under fake pretenses who cheated on her. How disrespectful.
Girl, if anyone who has listened to it, has watched it, the full part series, by the way, is now all kind of converged together.
It's 50 10-minute videos, right?
Yes, but now it is all on YouTube, which is where I watched it. I wasn't going to scroll through 50 videos. And I think it's actually over 50. So if anyone wants to watch it, we will link it down below.
Yeah. Maybe also we'll have a chat about it in our private community.
That would be really, really good. So you all sound off and also join the private community, the Justice League.
I also think there's something, I'm just going to add another thing, and this is something that relates to your experiences too. This very real thing that is cathartic for people to sharing their truth on the internet and being vulnerable in that way. It's not for everyone, but it is for some people. And why would anyone ever shame someone? If you don't want to watch it, just
move on. But that's the thing. People do want to watch it, even if they think it's a train wreck. It has had the internet and the American sites in a chokehold for days. By the time I watched it, most people that I knew personally had already seen it.
That's like 5 hours.
That's like watching a Netflix show. And essentially that's what she created on a social media platform.
Did she have a platform before this?
She did. So I think she was sharing bits and pieces, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong. And then she finally was like, let me give y'all the tea. Here is what happened.
And now they're divorced.
Now they are divorced. And she took you from the day they met to actually maybe a few months post-divorce where he was living in his car. And from a mental health perspective, let me also say that I saw yesterday that she said his brother reached out to her and claimed that he had, no surprise, specific mental health diagnoses. And she felt like she wanted to share that because that could have been an excuse for some of his behavior in the pathological line.
So I will say that all the compassion and healing vibes to people who struggle with different mental health disorders. Those mental health disorders do not give people the ability to abuse other people, and they're not defenses for harming others.
Amen.
So if you have something that you're struggling with, a diagnosis, a propensity, a behavior that may harm people or put people at risk, then it is your responsibility to get help for that.
Yep. And the diagnoses that I will not repeat, because I thought to myself, I don't know if I would have shared those specifically about someone else. My first response was, I didn't know that pathological lying was a condition of those things. So it kind of felt like maybe we're connecting dots that should not be connected.
Right, I also just don't, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Like, obviously he has a mental health disorder.
We know that.
Right? Like, no one in their right mind would treat someone this way. And I imagine she might too, right? Around her own confidence and maybe, I'm not diagnosing her, right? Obviously. We all do. And I think, right, I think that's the thing that I want us to start naming, right? You don't go through this world, so can I say something that my psychiatrist told me a couple weeks ago, which I thought was so I was like I have this very complicated relationship with being medicated, but I have to be, because if I'm not, I don't sleep. I struggle with anxiety. And so I'm on a small dose SSRI, which really helps most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time. Anyway, I was complaining to my doctor. I was like, I just wish, that like my life is great. Like I can identify my stressors. I eat really well. I exercise, blah, 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 blah. I wish I could just control this on my own. And she's like, Margo, that's not how it works. You know that. And you are experiencing life. Life is lifing.
Period.
Right? And so living a life right now in this world,
it's hard. Economically, socially, we have survived a pandemic that was global.
I mean, global warming, the war in Gaza, Ukraine, Russia, the presidential election, right? Immigration, refugee. I mean, like, how do you process all of this?
And so,
not to mention if you are dealing with your own health issues or family health issues or family dynamic stuff, which is all very complicated for everyone.
So here's what she did, and here's what I think people like her do. They give us permission to say, God damn, me too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what everybody wants.
And to know that you're not alone. I think the hardest thing about going through like a form of trauma, hers is big T trauma.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, is feeling alone.
She has to have a serious case of PTSD. How could she
ever trust someone again?
This is what I'm saying. I am sending her all the love. We are sending her flowers. Yes. I think she has a tremendous career in some form of storytelling. Like, I need her to pen a novel, 10-part Netflix special. Like, we gotta see this.
Something that I'm not going to take credit for this, because this is you have said over and over, but I think I want to like bring it into the chat, that if there are things in your life that you want, I want to encourage us to get them without a man.
Shundo.
Right, like it's great if you have a great man or a great woman or a great whoever to go through life. I personally don't know if I would choose to be a single parent by choice, but you don't need a man to have a baby. And I think it is the cause of a lot of bad decisions. So I also just heard that Lala Kent is pregnant with her second by IUI.
Who is Lala Kent?
From that Vanderpump show.
Oh.
She's having a baby on her own.
Good for her.
She wanted to have a second baby. She married that pathological liar, had the baby, Ocean. He cheated on her. He very similar actually. And she was like, I have a 3-year-old. I want a second baby. I'm 34 years old. I'm just going to do it.
And we recognize the privilege, obviously, being able to be a single parent, because you're often not single in those circumstances. You have a village. But I think there are resources that we all have and have around us that we depreciate and negate because of this value that we put on a hetero, Christian, conservative, normative lifestyle. And for many people, it is very isolating. And it causes us to make decisions that are against our own interests.
Also, the kind of the emphasis on the home and privacy within the home. I mean, there's a lot of legal jurisprudence around this too, right? Where it's almost like a vortex once you get into people's homes, but it's caused so much pain because people don't feel like they can share.
Yes, 110%.
Right, so
she said that, Margo. She was like, I wasn't really telling people what was going on.
Right, because you were married.
That's exactly what she said.
Yeah, no, I have heard that so much from people who listen to the podcast. Like, thank you for talking about being in a relationship, in a marriage, in a way that you're being open.
Wow.
Because
we're told it's the nucleus, right? It's the nuclear
and
family,
it's like
the thing
saying things that aren't right or a work in progress or you're working on or you want to change doesn't devalue the marriage or the relationship. Saying that you need help for whatever reason doesn't devalue yourself.
Again, this is reminding me, I think we've broken down why this story went viral.
Yes, because it's all of us.
She's a great storyteller, but what she really captured was some part of every single person that watched that.
And I think what captured me, which I know this sounds so weird and you're going to be so mad that I brought the Kardashians into the chat. But when Tristan Thomas, whatever, cheated on Khloe Kardashian.
Okay, the basketball player.
Mm-hmm, when she was 9 months pregnant with True. Do you remember that?
But you okay, thanks.
My heart broke for her because anyone could be in that situation. Yeah. And I think it's this thing, it's like the humanity and the pain of being human through these transitions, and we don't want to believe that people can hurt each other this way, but we all have been hurt in different ways.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, guys, sound off. Let us know your thoughts on Risa Tisa. And Legion was his name for folks who don't know.
So we are so excited that Osea is back in the house sponsoring this episode.
Yeah, these are our people. They speak to so many parts of who Margo and I are. And if you tuned into the podcast in the early days, you know that Osea has been a long-time sponsor and friend.
And it's so funny because I have kept using the products and keep ordering the products. Skincare is one of those things now that is a joy, and obviously in big age is something that we need to keep up, right? So it's the practice, it's not the thing.
Yes.
So these are two products that they're highlighting right now, two of our favorite products. This is the body scrub or body polish, and this is the Undaria algae body butter. I have just started using this combination, and I also add the oil. So I do the body polish, rinse it off, the oil, and then the body butter.
Oh, you like it with the butter. Mm-hmm. Nice.
But I've been using this. This is the sample size. I have one in my bathroom, but the sample size I keep in my purse. Okay. In the winter, because my skin is so dry.
Yeah. It's good to travel with, too.
Yeah. One of the things I love about this product is that it's incredibly nourishing, but it's not oily or like grimy, thick.
Sometimes body butters just don't absorb well, and this one definitely does.
Yes. So it doesn't leave a film or anything like that. And I can spot treat too. So like I spot treat my elbows, and I'm starting to develop like dry spots.
That's
big
really
age.
Good.
So yeah. So we will link our unique code both here and in our show notes. I would recommend both the sample sizes for travel and the kit. So you can buy the oil and the body butter. You can buy the body polish and the body butter. That's the best way to get the best deal. But they last and are shelf stable. So I get a few at a time. So Shai, we are back talking about the highs and lows of quitting. But I think before we jump into what that means to us and to us at this age, I think we need to frame why we're doing this now. This episode now.
For sure. So we had an episode all about our quitting journeys, which is part of our story that people are pretty interested in, because I don't think you hear enough about trained attorneys who worked as legal professionals who no longer are in the field. It's kind of like one of those specialized areas where you don't hear about people's stories.
And there's a lot of shame with quitting.
I was about to say that, because I mean, you and I have kind of both gotten hit by the criticism, almost like we couldn't cope or we couldn't handle it. Like we weren't strong enough to cut it and make it through, which we're going to hopefully debunk some of that today, how we even define success. But also since that time, we were able to present at Chicago Planner Conference. And we had a workshop all around quitting, and we kind of teased some of those themes at the beginning of the episode.
And we have another workshop on quitting March 22nd at the Mark, link right here.
Exactly.
That we are doing. So this episode is a precursor to that workshop. So if you're interested in this episode, definitely come and engage around your own quitting journeys, and not necessarily professionally.
We would love to have you. It's going to be a 90-minute workshop where we really dig in deep into some of these themes.
Absolutely. So what is unique in your mind to the concept of quitting at a big age?
Ooh, this is good. I think in some ways it can be easier. In some ways it can be harder. So I'll talk about the path that may make it a little easier. Is that when you're at a big age, sometimes your children are older if you have kids, and so maybe you feel like you can take more time for yourself. It's a unique age that I'm at right now where I have friends and family members who are either new grandparents or they're parenting very young kids. And so
I saw you post something the other day that was so funny. I almost fell off my chair. The crazy thing about being in your 40s is that some of your friends are your parents and some of them have newborns.
Period. Especially
some of them are breastfeeding and some of them are
100%. So think about it. I mean, I know people literally in my life right now, if they were teenage parents, their children are old enough to vote, to drive, to drink. I know people who through IVF or certain fertility treatments who literally have newborns who are nursing. So if you are at the former end of the spectrum, you probably are thinking, my kid was in college. I can do this now. I can really focus on me if it is about your career or relationship, especially. So that probably can make it a little bit easier. You also have more skills, more wisdom. But I think the hard part is also our kind of ways of being and our way of life feels very calcified. It's kind of like, this is who I am, and I can't see myself outside of this very narrow definition.
Yeah, I have some similar thoughts. I mean, I think one of the reasons quitting at a big age is easier is there's some level of been there, done there, right? So particularly around professional experiences, right? That you might not have that wanderlust about the type of work or working at a specific organization or, doing the thing, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe you've done it and it's lost its veneer.
Yeah.
Right? Or you don't want to do it anymore, right? So that was great for a period of time, but no longer serves you. I think the hard part is that if you were doing a lot of work in a specific way, changing courses is very hard.
Girl, 100%. And even telling yourself that you are worthy of it.
I know. So we have both been struggling with that. I personally have been trying to figure out, and I actually don't think there's such a thing as balance. I think we define balance for ourselves. So
that's fair.
And I think when you're a solopreneur or have different businesses, there's always a level of juggling. But you and I both have our own consulting practices. You have your brand and you have the podcast. I have a consulting practice and the podcast. And personally, I've been struggling over the last couple months with just not finding a lot of satisfaction out of the consulting work and having accepted a lot of work that I'm not enjoying, that I'm not being paid enough for, and that I am not doing that well.
So let's jump into solopreneurship in particular, because I think there are people who are listening to us who could probably really see themselves in this moment about what it means to be a solopreneur, which we define or is defined as a one-person business where you are your business. So you just kind of teed up for us the struggles that you had as a solopreneur. What prompted you to go in that direction?
So for me, I knew, so it was multifaceted. I knew I no longer wanted to stay at my former position. I had done it for a long time. I had loved it. I had done a very good job, and I did not feel valued. And so I wanted a change. I wanted a little bit more flexibility. So my former job, I was a teacher, but I was also a litigator, which involved having to be at court multiple times a week. And the court that I was at most of the time was about 45 minutes from my house, which was just challenging for our life with 3 little kids. And I had to be there at 8:45. I mean, it was fine. Like most people do it. I just no longer wanted to litigate in that way. I had experienced some health challenges and had kind of a different clarity about things that I wanted to do. I stopped believing in the system I was working in. My dad was sick. So I was looking for flexibility, looking to do aligned work, but with a different focus, and to invest in the podcast.
Okay.
What about you?
I also was in the midst of a lot of health challenges that I now realize at that point. It had first started with massive uterine fibroids that just grew out of control in a very short period of time. Followed a year later by cancer diagnosis. And I felt at that time, and I still do as I learn more, that a lot of what I was experiencing physiologically was a direct response to stress. So I knew that I had to get off of the hamster wheel in that way. And I actually, Margo, did not know what I was going to do. I had a brain that I knew that I wanted to work my way to there, but it was just always a matter of me of like quitting in small steps. And so,
Same. So I think I have done that too. It's so funny that you say that, because I experienced your quitting journey as you being so focused.
Yeah. I was focused on getting the hell out.
Yes, but like you were so strategic. You had your blog, you had your Instagram, you went around, you applied for jobs while you were going through treatment. Mm-hmm. You didn't quit your job till you had another job.
Exactly.
I mean, you were very responsible. Yeah.
And that's something else. I think part of this quitting story too is that people think you just have to blow up your whole life, and that's not the thing.
No, and I think for my quitting journey, it has been in small steps. And that's how I've been able to figure out, and I still haven't figured it out, but start learning where I want to direct my energy.
So what has some of the positives been? Because it sounds like from what the intention that you set is exactly what you've been able to do as far as your consulting is concerned.
Yeah, but I've replicated a lot of my workaholism tendencies. So I feel like I feel like if I'm not working all the time, I'm not being productive. And I have taken on a lot of work for free, which I shouldn't have done. Or I've taken on a lot of work that's not paid.
As far as people like invite you to be a part of certain things, I see.
And I think that like initially, you know, people will approach me to do work for them. I give them my rate. They say that they can't pay that rate, and then I just take whatever.
So it's trying to figure out what's
the cutoff. I was at our market event. There was this woman who's a professional coach, and I was sharing this a little bit with her. She's actually friends with Ashley, Black Magic Mama. And I was telling her the story, and she was like, "You telling me this is giving me anxiety. I would never have let you take on any of those jobs."
Really?
Yeah, she was like, "You have devalued your skill set and harmed your chances." I was like, "Oh." But it was done with love. I mean, she was saying, like, you just have to have a number. What's your number? And walk away.
Yes. It's so funny because I think both of our faces kind of turned to the camera at the same time. So if you're listening, you probably missed that moment. But it resonated with me as well. Because I said to someone recently, I asked someone for a quote for some services. And the number was much higher than I thought it was going to be. And also higher than what I thought the value was. But that's my subjective perception. I said to myself and to others, oh, the rate is the rate. I don't want to pay that rate, but someone will. And I want this person to go out and to work with clients who are able to pay the rate, who see the services as being aligned with the value that, you know, he's prescribed to it. I don't feel that way, but it's nothing wrong with what he's charging.
Right. And you know how we said on another episode, not everyone is for everyone?
Yes.
It's the same for work.
Yes.
Right? Not every opportunity is going to be for you.
Absolutely.
And I think that I am really working on coming to this season from a place of abundance. Like, there will be more work.
Mm-hmm.
There will be more things. It's not, I don't have to fight for scraps. I've worked so hard, but I think it's really hard to believe that when you don't need salary. And so I think there's something, we've said this before, that there's a lot of privilege in having a salary. We would never tell someone just to quit.
There's a lot of privilege in having a salary, and there's a lot of privilege in having a partner if you are on a solopreneurship journey. And so we don't want to minimize those things. And hopefully it's the kind of topic that we can really bring down in our workshop. There are, I think, still ways to be able to do it. Like when I made this decision, I was the primary breadwinner in my relationship. I had a relationship, but I was still the one who was a lot more financially secure. And I was kind of like our fiscal manager. I was more fiscally responsible. And I think she would even describe me in that way. And so there was certain responsibility that I could not ignore, but I prepared for it. Mm-hmm. And it's still possible.
Mm-hmm. I think the other thing about this journey is there's, at least my brain has switched a little bit to start to see things as business opportunities, whereas before I didn't in those terms.
So true. So true. I was just thinking the other day about who is my network. Mm-hmm. And I would not have thought of myself in that way, because as an attorney and working in public policy and you're working for other people, you go to conferences, right? Your network is kind of automatically built in. You walk into your network, and sure, you can do work to kind of extend it and to meet the right people and to be in the right rooms. But now it is 100% on us. Mm-hmm. And I looked up recently. So I was like, I am in a room talking to a camera, or in Boston talking to you in a camera most days. Where is my network? Mm-hmm. And you have to build it. I have to think about that as a business owner.
You have to build it, and you have to think to things like, where do you want to invest your time and align your energies?
Amen.
Right? So we've been very intentional about that, and it's been incredible.
I think so. I think that what I had to do, especially this year, coming into this all, was completely flip things upside down. And that has been a benefit for me, that I think I have the capacity to do that. If I feel like it's not working, whether it be because of my health, because of the stress, because of my interests, things shift and change over time. I don't have to apply for a job to change my business.
Yeah, I have felt similar. There's things that I just now do without having to think. Like, I block off a week for my kids' vacation. I don't have to move cases around or have people have coverage or ask my boss for permission. I am my boss.
You are your boss.
Right. I think there's also this thing that has happened that I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around, where I value my time differently. And so I ask myself, with every opportunity, is this a good use of my time? Could my time be better used doing other things?
100%. I think that we have to learn how to navigate and negotiate time very differently than we did before. You had to be in court at a certain time.
I had to be in court at a certain time. I had to teach at a certain time. I had faculty at a certain time, right? I ran a department, so I had department meetings at a certain time, right? Which in many ways creates a lot of structure, which we all thrive on structure, right?
For sure.
It was just built in. I think the real challenge with doing it on your own, figuring out how to build in that structure and not be doing 8 million things at once.
Because everything will take priority. And for me, because I'm also working from home on politics and fashion, I will wake up in the morning, and sometimes it's necessary, but the dishes in the sink will give me as much stress as preparing for the podcast, as creating a piece of sponsored content. And it's like, how do you know what to focus on and prioritize in that moment? It is hard because no one is telling you that. You have to build that for yourself.
Yeah, and I've struggled, and I'm getting better because you've helped me in some other, but like, for example, I have 5 emails. I have my personal email, I have my consulting email, I have the
Yep.
We have the podcast email, I have a part-time job at a nonprofit. I have that email, and I still have my old Northeastern email that I'm expected to check because I'm still technically on faculty for the next couple months.
Girl.
And I find, and like with one of my jobs, I need to do a timesheet. Another one of my consulting jobs, I bill monthly. Another one, I bill weekly.
Yeah.
And we have Instagram and YouTube. And so I very quickly can get in a
loop?
Like a hamster wheel where I'm like, I'm dropping the ball. I know I'm dropping the ball. I don't know what I'm dropping the ball.
But I know something has to be
done, and I don't know what it is.
So let's just talk about the take a step back, because that is exactly where I was on Sunday. And I want to preface this by saying that we both are living lives that we dreamed of. We are so grateful. I could never have imagined. For the freedom and for the resources to do what we do. And so I don't want this to come off as an episode about us complaining, because there are highs and lows in every single thing that we will do in life. But this idea and this panic that we're constantly dropping something because we're spread so thin across multiple things is real. And on last Sunday, I went through a panicked day of looping about things I was forgetting. And I tried everything at my fingertips to calm myself down. I worked out, I journaled, I made a to-do list, I made my agenda for the week. I even went for a walk. I watched some mindless TV. I drank, which I know is not the best coping mechanism.
We do what we can.
But anything to just calm my nervous system down, and nothing worked. And the thing that kept looping in my head, Margo, was that I know I am forgetting something.
It's the worst feeling. And I don't know if it's unique to being a solopreneur. I imagine it's not. Like, I remember feeling this way at some level in a full-time work too, but there's something unique to it. And I would just like to say, I don't think we're complaining. So my father-in-law said something last week that blew my mind. And he said that happiness is wanting what you have. Mm-hmm. And we are happy.
Yes. Yes.
I could have never dreamed of the life I have.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we don't struggle.
Amen. Thank you for that reframe.
Right?
Yes.
So you can be happy and struggle.
Yeah. Those things are not mutually exclusive.
It doesn't mean that you don't want your life. It means that you don't want to feel the way you are feeling.
Yes. 100%.
And no one should feel that way. And so one of the things that is a work in progress, but I think one of the things solopreneurs have to work on is figuring out just tools to not forget or able to, I don't know, be like, I'm done with that now.
See, here's the thing. And so I've had people say to me from the outside looking in that my primary problem is that I don't stop working. And even when I think I'm not working, I'm actually in some way still working.
People said that to me.
See? So the economic system has figured out a way to, in some ways, not all, to kind of package up what a work week looks like if you work for someone else. Not gotten to that same place with tools, expectations, models, inspirations when you work for yourself as a one-person business.
Yeah, and I also think there's this tension, right? Because we're like, work-life balance, we want boundaries. If we worked for someone else, we wouldn't be working at night. But when you're working for yourself, sometimes you want to work.
Exactly. Like, I woke up yesterday and I thought to myself, I'm feeling really good. I want to create today. And I had to tell myself, okay, that may be what you think, but it will put you in a cycle of anxiety around content production, because my hobby became my job. And so I have to figure out how to still be creative and get that outlet outside of the content that I would create.
Yeah. And I think that, so I heard, do you know Ashley Graham?
Yeah.
So she has this new show on Roku about side hustles.
Oh.
It's really good. And she and the woman who started Skits with.
Okay. I didn't know there was someone who started that with her, but okay.
Who was the founder of Skims. Are investing their own money in female-founded side hustles.
Oh, I love this.
It's a really cool model, right? We see this. It's like a Shark Tank for women.
Okay.
But for people who are trying to buy themselves out of their full-time
jobs.
So
they have a side hustle and they're trying to scale it, and they go to these people.
Exactly. They're at different levels of scale.
Oh, I got to watch this. Okay.
It's really good. It's actually been helpful for me thinking about the podcast and as we're trying to scale up. And Ashley on her Instagram, as the show was debuting over the weekend, said something like, I don't really know, but basically like every day I have to do the following things. I need to do something for me. I need to spend time with my kids. I need to spend time with my husband, and I need to work on my businesses. That's on the weekends, that's over vacation. And obviously it's going to ebb and flow depending on the expectations.
Amen.
But if I don't check on my businesses, that causes me more anxiety if I do. And so how do you do that in a way that it's not intrusive into every part of your being? I don't know. I have not figured it out.
Shit, me either. I think this is the conversation that we need to have with our community, with our listeners, and with our viewers. How do we find time, especially as we are digging deep into our dreams, going back to that first part, right? Of what makes it less challenging to quit at a big age. We are finally doing it. The pandemic especially taught us that shit, go for it. But on that journey, we still have to be healthy and whole.
Totally. We have to really allow ourselves to feel success through different metrics.
For sure.
Right? There aren't only singular metrics of success.
Yeah. So we've said a lot about kind of the struggles that we've had, the highs, the lows, but we do want to end today's episode with digging into what we have found to be very helpful. And again, we'll dig much more into this during our workshop. But one of the things was hiring a coach, right?
Yeah, so helped me find a coach as I was starting to think about this. So I bought myself, a package with a coach for my 40th birthday.
Yep.
And you have a coach that you see on occasion.
I do. So I have had a relationship with my coach. Her name is Jenny for probably about 5 years now. And let me just say that some of my earlier advice that she gave me, I am just now implementing. Amazing. So these things are not linear and there is no race to a finish line. It's a journey. And she always kind of grounds me and brings me back to a place of focus and intention in my business in a way that I could not do strategically. A business owner as a one-person business, I think she has a lot of very important advice that has helped me in a way that I would not have helped myself.
Amazing. And it actually makes me think that I should schedule an appointment with my coach, who I haven't talked to in a year or so. Right, as there's just been so much shift.
Yeah, and the other thing I think that has helped us too, and we talked about kind of digging deeper into, is a community.
Mm-hmm. Which is hard.
It's really hard as a solopreneur. We are trying to use the Justice League as part of that space, but I think there's more that we need.
I think so too. I mean, we don't know anyone else really doing podcasts. I know one other person, but I think it is important to find people who are doing things at least adjacent to the work that you're doing, who can understand.
Absolutely. And there are actually two kind of co-working social club type spaces in DC that are marketed to Black professionals that I've been really interested in joining.
Oh, I think that would be amazing.
I think so too. And you know what it reminds me of? We talked about this place recently. They closed during the pandemic.
Yes. Wing.
Yes.
I know. I keep thinking about that. There's nothing like that in Boston, as far as I know, for someone like me, but there was the Wing, which was a co-working space for women. Yeah. I know it had a lot of issues, or allegedly had issues, but it was a beautiful space, a lot of solopreneurs, a really welcoming environment. They had a lot of discussions and assistance with building a business, scaling a business, and I would love to find something. If you have any ideas, let us know.
Okay. Listen, I don't want to put nothing else on our list, but it kind of sounds like we're talking ourselves into creating something like that. So I'm just saying, okay, I think we could have a Justice League physical location where people come in for all those same resources. So that's that.
Well, let's vision board. I think, wow. Yeah. Okay. That's amazing. I had not thought of that. This is another one that, I did not realize how much stress it was causing me. Okay. So first of all, we are a tiny business. We just started last year. We broke even just a few months ago, right? We both put in an initial investment. We broke even. We're starting to turn a profit. I have been so torn up.
I know you've been like, you thought people. Margo thought the feds were coming for us, and they were going to throw us into jail.
And I am not good with forms. I thought I wanted to be an immigration lawyer until I fucked up too many forms, right? And I was like, why are we not just hiring an accountant? Why did we not just pay for FreshBooks or Quicken and just send it to the accountant? Yeah, and I was like,
we're not doing it. We are not doing it.
And you know what? Things. FreshBooks is fun to do. It is my business. I get to say expense, taxi, food. We send it to Ray, and then he files for taxes.
You see? So,
and it's not that much. I mean, his time is valuable.
For sure.
We pay for his time.
For sure.
But for a tax expert,
for sure,
our bank account is not complicated.
This is what I'm saying.
And but for me, it was.
And here's the thing too, folks, if you don't even want to deal with anything, if you want someone to tell you this is how much you should take out of your account, you can also hire your tax professional to be your bookkeeper month by month. And so there are many ways. I think what we're trying to say is don't hide behind the difficult tasks.
And sometimes it is worth it to pay for things that theoretically you could do on your own.
Amen. Amen.
Right. So theoretically, a small business, yes, you can do your taxes on your own. Should you do your taxes on your own? I don't know. But for us, it wasn't a good use of our time or skills, right? You probably were much more calm about it. Whatever. It was a good use of our money to pay for this for the person to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I was calm about it because I'm pretty reckless. So I'm happy.
No, and you've been in business for yourself.
That you were not calm about it.
I was not calm about it. I've had a full-time job for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so my taxes have always been very simple. And they're no longer simple. Okay, and then I think you all are seeing in real time something that Tashira and I are trying to do on the regular now, which is reevaluate our goals. Right, that what our goals were 6 months ago, a year ago, are now no longer our goals. Those goals change, and that is how a business has to operate.
And it doesn't mean that you have failed because of it. So I'll give you an example. I started off this year, many of you may have even taken my survey, very clear on an intention to start to create a ladder between free to top tier individual styling services. Still a plan, but the first quarter of the year is going to be over very soon. And I am not where I thought I was going to be with the plan. Not because things just fell apart or because I don't think I can do it, but because other things took priority. And so constantly looking at our goals, figuring out what needs to shift and what doesn't, I think is also some practical advice that might be helpful.
Absolutely. So if you want to have more of these individual conversations, both with yourself and with us, come to our workshop at the Mark. Hopefully we'll be repeating the workshop in different locations throughout the year, but it is really, really fun and very collaborative.
We are so excited that you all tuned in for another episode and that our community is growing. Thank you for over 4,000 subscribers over on the YouTube. Y'all the real MVPs for real. And we will see you all next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Justice. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to learn more about our podcast, be sure to check us out on our website at justicepodcast.com. You can also reach out to us there if you want to be featured on the show or if you have a business or a product that you think would be a good fit for our audience. Thanks again for listening.